Welcome to our digital worship. Now, we're not together physically, but there is a certain type of intimacy to a digital worship. There's a sense of closeness and a focus on content on a kind of different level than when we're together in live community. And Pastor Juan Carlos always brings some important content this week about hospitality. So let's worship together as we seek to be our best selves and seek a better world.
Today's reading is Hebrews 13, 1-2. Let mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that some have entertained angels without knowing it.
One of the key practices in the Christian tradition is hospitality. It goes back to the first Christians who felt a call to be a people who welcomed others. Welcome others in all sorts of ways. They were to welcome the stranger and the foreigner for sure. That went back to the earlier stories among their own people, right? The ancient Israelites were called to be a people hospitable to the stranger because they have been strangers in a strange land. And so these early Christians who were Jewish people took that kind of ethos and then took it another step. They were to welcome the other, the Gentile, the stranger, the one who did not believe like they believed, the one that was kind of just coming for a season, the sick, the imprisoned, and they were to welcome them as they would welcome Christ. In fact, they kind of took seriously that passage from Matthew 25 that said, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me to drink. I was sick and in prison and you visited me. They took that kind of way of thinking and decided that they wanted to live in this way, in this hospitable way. So what does it mean for us today to practice hospitality? Not just any hospitality, but what I like to call radical hospitality. And first, we need to remember the word radical means at the root or to the root. So what does it mean for us to practice the kind of hospitality that's to the root of who we are as followers of Jesus? We know this word is interesting in and of itself. The root word is hospice, so we have, for example, hospital. We have hospitality. And often in hospitality, we mean like hotels and restaurants, those kinds of places that kind of host people. We have host. That's part of that root word. And yes, there is a sense in those words about someone who is hosted, a stranger, a foreigner, a sojourner who's hosted. But hospice has an interesting twist in its etymology. Hospice is a word that includes host guest, right? Host guest. Host guesting would be the best way to define this word. In other words, that there's something about hospitality, if we're practicing it, in which we recognize that, yes, we might be the host for sure, but that also, in order for us to be truly hospitable, we need to take on the aspect of being the guest. So think about any time you've been a guest somewhere. What was it that made you feel comfortable? What made you feel at home? What made you feel welcomed? Was it the way in which the host greeted you, maybe at the door by name and welcomed you into their home? Or was it the kind of food they cooked? Maybe the host sent you an email and said, hey, what do you like to eat? And then they cooked that, right? That's a sense of being home. Or maybe there's the kind of music that they were playing as you were in the space. Or maybe they invited a friend that had certain affinities with you, right? They knew that in order for you to feel comfortable, you had to be with others that were more like you. Or maybe it was some other little details. Maybe the way they were curious about your life and they looked at you in the eye, or the way they double-checked with you about how do you pronounce your name again? Or maybe it was the way they welcomed your children, you know? Maybe they don't have children, but the way that they welcome your children with toys and stories, and they were not bothered that the kids were kind of running everywhere. What was it that made you feel at home when you've been a guest somewhere? Now, take that feeling and now carry it to what Christian hospitality looks like. Christian hospitality takes seriously the person that is coming before us. It's not just about being nice. You can be nice and not be hospitable, by the way. Or you can be polite and not be hospitable in the way that Jesus calls us to. It's a way in which we think about what we do and ask the question, how will the stranger and guest feel if they enter this space? Would they feel at home? Or are there signs everywhere that they are an other? See, at its core, the practice of hospitality, it's about making sure that this one before us feels their full humanity. They're seen for who they are. It's not that we erase the differences that we have with one another. No. In fact, the beauty of humanity is that we are different, but instead it's that we engage each other in a way that humanizes the other. And in the coming into the space, and into our lives and into our churches, that we recognize that other has something to bring to the table. They have something that they bring, that their presence, it's important to us. That, as I often say in churches, that the presence of that other means that we're more whole because they're with us. In other words, we're incomplete without that other. That means that radical hospitality has challenges. I know we all get nervous before strangers. Often our desire for safety and our concerns for that keep us from welcoming that other. So we need to work through that within our own selves. We need to make sure that we check in on that within ourselves. And are we seeing danger everywhere? Because the truth is that if we're to be a people of radical hospitality, we have to be willing to take risks. Being a host guest is risky. It always is. Think about what Jesus tells us in Matthew 25. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was sick. I was sick and imprisoned. And you visited me. So there's something that's always risky about this proposition. So we have to be willing together. If we're to be a people of radical hospitality, we have to be willing to check in to that sense of safety within us and asking the question, is our sense of safety keeping us from engaging one another in the ways that we should? And then we also need to be willing to be risk takers in other ways. For example, if you notice in Jesus' talk, he says, you visited me. So there's often the moments in our life, if we're to be a people of radical hospitality, where we actually go somewhere and put ourselves in the place of the guest. And I think that's probably one of the best practices. If we're to be a people of radical hospitality, how often do we put ourselves in the place of the guest? Or are we always just wanting to be the host? Do we always want to have people in our turf, on our terms, right? Well, if we're to be radical to the root of holy hospitality, then we have to be willing to go and put ourselves constantly in the place of the guest, constantly curious, constantly that riskiness of that helps prepare our hearts and minds for what it looks like to truly host someone in the way that Jesus would host them. This sense of transformation that holy hospitality brings to us, it's rooted in that encounter. When we're willing to enter into that encounter with this other human being, we then see their life and their own sense of the holy and their own sense of mystery and awe and their own sense of wonder. And so in this moment, in this encounter, in this radical hospitality, then that encounter begins to then transform each of us. We seeing the holy in new ways, the divine in new ways. We see our own lives differently from the ways that others can give them to us, mirror to us. And in that sense, over time, imagine it. Just imagine it in our churches, in our families, in our workplaces, in the marketplace, in this way of radical hospitality, in the risk-taking way of radical hospitality. Then all of a sudden, we strengthen our own humanity. We strengthen our own sense of what God is up to. We strengthen the knowledge that the Spirit is with us, no matter who we are or where we are. We getting a deeper sense of this woven tapestry of being human in the world, of a God that's still at work, weaving us together, that Spirit that we so often talk about. So people of God, pay attention, be willing to take the risk and practice radical hospitality. And then we together practice it together for the life of the world. Amen. People of God, go into the peace of Christ and be open. Jesus is showing up in all sorts of ways. Practice radical hospitality this week, and there's no telling where Jesus will be found. Go in that love. Amen.